in their opening round game for them, the quarterfinals. Kendall Kaut, Sic'Em365.com college basketball writer. He joins us now on the show in this 5 o'clock hour. Wrote a story about James Akinjo. Deep look at Baylor's all Big 12 and All-American point guard as well. Kendall, how much fun did you have kind of digging in and talking to James and just kind of getting a little bit to what floats his boat?
Smokey, I enjoyed it. James is a lot different than Jarrett, Davion, Adam, those kind of guys, but different in a good way. Pretty hard to get him to open up about certain things, but then other things. He loved talking about his headband. He loved talking about his time in Oakland. So a little bit different challenge to talk to, but I think it's good to have people that kind of challenge you in different ways.
Kendall, speaking of James, it looks like he, the last couple games, is feeling like himself again, especially the last one. He really, started making threes again. How big is it for Baylor to get points from him, which they didn't in the first part of their 5-game winning streak? They did that without really much from him offensively.
But, Paul, they absolutely have to have somebody like James who can create their own offense. Baylor's going to get scouted pretty well in both this tournament and the NCAA tournament. So for James to play kind of like he had in his first games back after the tailbone, that won't be sufficient to have the outcome Baylor wants to end the season. But if he's feeling confident enough to fire up that 28-foot three he took to beat Iowa State, I think they're in a pretty good spot going forward.
The All Big 12 Awards announced. Scott Drew, I know, Coach of the Year, is voted on by the coaches. AP went with Mark Adams. So there's a lot of debate about Scott Drew, as I'm sure you probably saw from other Big 12 fans. But your thoughts on him getting a third straight Coach of the Year, and as well as maybe any other of the accolades that stood out to you or were notable?
Sure. So, Craig, I don't think there's any reason you could really complain unless you were an artist tech partisan, and we've seen that there are plenty of those folks on Twitter who, I guess, spend their days and nights responding to anybody who mentions that Scott Drew was a deserving winner. But you win the Big 12, you lose your leading scorer. Jeremy Sohan misses multiple games. Adam Flagler misses multiple games. His knee bothers him and others. James Akinjo misses multiple games. I mean, other than Kendall Brown, it felt like just about everybody was out of the lineup for some period of time besides him and Bothon. But so I don't think you could have had any qualm if Mark Adams had won it, if Scott Drew had won it, even if TJ Otzelberger had won it as disastrous as Iowa State was last season, not winning any Big 12 games. I think what probably sticks out to me otherwise, I thought there were 7 guys who could contend for all Big 12 spots. The 5 that made it, along with Adam Flagler. And then I can't remember who else I would have had the hot take about it, but I was a little frustrated that Adam didn't make the All Big 12 team. Brent Bacchus is now the director of player personnel for Arizona, was a graduate assistant for 3 years at Baylor. When I tweeted out that I thought Adam was probably going to get snubbed on the All Big 12 team, he mentioned that it would be an unbelievable travesty. So I thought Adam really deserved to make it. I think you could make the case that Adam's been Baylor's best player this season. But with how good James was to start the year and how good he was to finish, I can understand picking James. But Adam's a snub that I think didn't get enough attention nationally.
Kendall, I know that when Baylor was 15-0, they were better than what they are right now as they've gotten this little streak going towards the end of the season because they had more players, JTT and obviously LJ Cryer. But right now, are they playing nearly as good or as well with what they've done in recent weeks?
I think they're pretty close. Okay, I think if you had like a Vegas line right now, I think the Baylor team from December would probably be about a 2.5-point favorite against the Baylor team now. So I think they're getting close to that level. But ultimately, this is not last season where Baylor or Gonzaga loomed, or 2012 or Kentucky loomed, or 2008 where KU, Memphis, UCLA, and North Carolina were so dominant. I don't think there is a dominant team right now as good as Gonzaga can be at its apex. And so you don't have to be as good as you were in December to win the title. But this is maybe a year where a surprising team could win it, and maybe Baylor's a little surprising to some people.
Kendall Brown started shooting some threes, and so far it looks like teams defensively are kind of letting him do it. Do you expect that to change this week?
I don't think it's going to change right now, Paul. I think with any team in basketball, there's kind of something you have to give away. I think with Baylor, with how athletic Kendall Brown is, you continue to dare him to hit those shots. If you're another team, I asked Scott Drew both after the KU game in Waco and the Texas game in Austin about Kendall Brown's confidence, and he said, he keeps making them in practice. We want to see him take those shots. I wouldn't adjust my defense yet if I'm another team because he's just so athletic that I'd rather gamble that Kendall either won't take the shots, he's still maybe a little reluctant, or that he won't hit him at a high enough clip because you get right up on Kendall Brown, there's a reason he might be a lottery pick next season, and I would continue to gamble on his three-point shot and not on trying to beat Kendall at the rim.
So LJ Cryer did not practice once again today. I don't think that comes as much of a surprise to anybody. Scott Drew said he's improving, but that he's going to remain a game-time decision throughout the rest of the year, basically. At this point, Kendall, are you pinning any hopes to LJ Cryer being available, or are you just kind of thinking about it as though he's just not going to be around as they move forward?
Craig, I think it is possible LJ will play again this season. I kind of had the perspective of, you just shut him down because it's kind of weird to reinsert him again. Against Tech, he hits a couple of big triples, but you wonder if you haven't played that long, are you ready to go? But I think from Baylor's perspective, they recognize he was their leading scorer. He spaces the floor differently, and if you're an opponent, he's kind of an option you'd have to insert. I don't know if he's going to be the first guy off the bench or they'll mess with their rotation with how well they played to end the season. But I think he's somebody you can bring in if maybe you have a little bit of a lull in the offense. And if you do kind of feel like you get into the Elite Eight or later in the season and maybe the opponent is at your level or slightly better, you can insert him. But it's telling that Baylor has not just shut him down all the way. I think there is still a real chance that LJ could play going forward.
How many games do they need to win this week in Kansas City to remain a number one seed?
I think Smokey is contingent on a few things. I think they could lose the first game, and if Auburn and Kentucky go out early in the SEC tournament, they could be fine. I think they could win one game, then Auburn could beat Kentucky in the championship. KU could win the title here, and that may not be enough. So it's contingent on a lot. I think to feel secure, Baylor needs to make the title game, and then I think Baylor's probably solid there. I feel 100% certain Gonzaga will be a one seed. It would take a catastrophe out to Arizona, as you can hear maybe the background of water coming by the T-Mobile Arena for the Big 12 tournament. What a sound. But if you look at it, Arizona's going to get a one seed barring catastrophe. Gonzaga is locked. KU, Baylor, some people think they're competitors, only one get it. I think both potentially could. The challenge for KU is if they get into a head-to-head with Kentucky, the Wildcats absolutely eviscerated them in Allen Fieldhouse. That wasn't a thing that the committee considered at the first part because Baylor separated them, so the head-to-head didn't become a factor. But I think if Baylor wins two games, you feel pretty darn good about getting a one seed, regardless of KU beats you in that championship game. I think Baylor's resume is still good enough that Baylor would trump KU if they're in the final. I think if Baylor does not make the final, the odds are probably a little bit less than 50%, just because I expect Kentucky and Auburn to go pretty far in the SEC tournament.
Back to the James Akinjo profile. You were able to get a lot out of him. We had him on the day, I think, or the morning or day he committed to Baylor, and we know about his background in Oakland, lost his mother when he was 4. We saw that episode on Our Time when the tattoo of his mother's face on his body, I think it's his abdomen. He seems to be someone that plays with a flair, but he's very quiet, or I guess not quiet, very, is he very secretive? I think that's a word I saw in your story.
Yeah, so Smokey, I think both characterizations are fair. I think he's both quiet. Like you've obviously been at many of the press conferences, Smokey, more than I even have been at. And we often have to keep our reporters as close as possible to James. There's that Seinfeld episode where Jerry ends up wearing the puppy shirt because he doesn't know what the talker is saying. And I kind of joked with James during the interview I did with him where I was like, James, you're kind of a quiet talker. Like, are you really telling me that you're in the locker room just shouting at people? And James was like, sometimes I do get mad and I shout at people. And I was like, James, I can't really believe that, but he's adamant that he does sometimes. And he is a very secretive guy. Like, when I would interview Jared and Davion a lot over the years, I could pull up clips, say, what's going on here? They break it down. They tell me what's going on. And for James, it's like, listen, man, I just can't give you these secrets. And I think it goes back to his background that if you come from losing your mother, your grandmother does a great job raising you, but you come from a rougher part of Oakland, as he's described it, you feel like you had to really earn everything you've done. And to give away any piece of a secret for him is not an option. So he's a little bit different to try and break down, get a little bit of intel from. That's why I try to talk to several people to get info on him. But he's a really, really unique presence.
I don't know if I've seen a player that trusts himself in kind of out of control situations. And I mean that as a compliment as much as James Akinjo does.
I think that's very accurate, Paul. I think that James Akinjo is just an absolute fighter. Luckily for all of us, he has not chosen to get into MMA or robbing people, because if James Akinjo ever fought me, the day would be over. So luckily he has chosen to be a good man. But he is absolutely controlled, understands what he wants to do, and I just absolutely respect a man who wears a headband.
So, Kendall, I mean, the focus is on right now, obviously, but the other day I was just talking off air with Grayson a little bit, and we were talking about, there's a good chance that Baylor could lose a lot of what they've got right now. because of the fact that even their younger players are NBA talents. And he got his face lit up when he started bringing up some of the future guys, Keontae George in particular. I was just curious of your thoughts or maybe what you've heard about Keontae George and his development as he's kind of been waiting in the wings.
Yeah, I think they're absolutely ready. Keontae George is a day one guy. I think he's going to be the best freshman guard Baylor will ever have. Absolute bucket. I often say, Craig, that the number one skill in basketball is the ability to create your own shot. And there's no doubt, although Keontae's more of a shooting guard than a point guard, he will get buckets on his own regardless of what happens in the offense. If things break down, he's going to play really well. I share your concern that you and Grace talked about off air, as you mentioned, that I think a lot of Baylor guys could potentially go pro, go to the NBA, or decide, you know what, this is it for me in college. But when you have somebody like Keontae George, and Ashley often says Baylor picks first in the transfer portal, you feel pretty good about the squad Baylor will assemble next season. But I would agree with the sentiment that I think it'll look a lot different than it does this year.
One story that I want to share, and Kendall, thanks for your time today, is when he and Langston Love were going at each other, reminds me of last Friday. We had Tweety Carter on, and Tweety and King were practicing against the team on Thursday and Friday, and we were told that James Akinjo and Tweety, I mean, that was one hellacious matchup when they were practicing to make each one of them better.
Yeah, and when you talk to these guys kind of about, hey, what do you do over the summer? That's really the time where a lot of them say that's where I developed into my best. Jonathan Chachua said that during the COVID period, he found a high school gym with some GAs and Davion Mitchell, and he would just work on the perimeter and say, I'm not going to get beat on the perimeter. I've got to be a better defender. That's where Matt Meyer, after he had gained a little bit of weight last summer from eating too much Long John Silver's, as he framed it, was able to lose the weight working out with Charlie Belton. So the summers are kind of a big time for Baylor, and that's where they really go at it. They really get kind of chippy with one another, and that's really, I think you really see the development kind of strength of the squad.
What a weird thing to get hooked on over the summer.
No, those little chips, man, the little what do you call them? Crinkles or whatever?
The parts of the frying stuff.
What are those little tiny, it's fat, right? I mean, it's basically,
Yes.
but it's so good. That's what I would order extra whatever they called it. Kendall, when was the last time you had Long John Silver's?
You know, I think it was 2012, and that's one of those things that you never forget your last Long John Silver's because you hope it'll be the last one. Truly, I don't think they're a sponsor for you all, and if they are, I'm doing a service.
No, that's fine. Yeah,
I don't like the way you answered that at all.
I do.
What are those things called? The little
cracklins?
Cracklins or whatever. No, yeah. I don't know what they are. All right, Kendall. Thanks, man. Craig, you have anything else with him? Thanks for your time. Kendall Kaut, Sic'Em 365, college basketball writer. What are those called?
I think they're the cracklins.
Cracklins?
Yeah.
You could actually order extra, whatever that is. But chicken plank. I always got the chicken planks, and then it's the hand battered whatever.
I've been to Long John Silver's in a decade.
I don't think I have either.
At least a decade.
There's one a stone's throw from my house that I don't go.
What are the crunchy things called at Long John Silver's? Those little pieces of fried batter they sprinkle over the fish and fry platters. Be ordered a secret menu side dish called Crumbs, Crunchies, and Crispies.
Well, they're just pulling old stuff out.
Pieces of batter.
That's really, it's just like the stuff that fell off the fried fish.
Yeah.
And they put it in like it's some, new thing or something.
And they do that with the chicken planks as well, which I used to devour some chicken planks. I think that's pretty cool. All right. Called crumblies. There's another thing they call crumblies.
Crumblies.
I'm going straight to the nearest Long John Silver's after the show.
That is branding right there.
That dude got a promotion. Whoever that came up with, let's take the crumbs, change the name of them because
and
Americans are so dumb.
35 cents to eat more of them.
Eat these fried pieces that fell off. Yeah.
Here they are. It's like part of the menu. Crumblies. You get them. It's like a big thing of a bunch.
Grift,
I'm telling you, it's delicious.
What a grift.
Yeah, that guy is